I stood in the kitchen, the warm glow of the overhead lights illuminating the space as I chopped vegetables for dinner. The smell of garlic and onions filled the air, mixing with the faint aroma of rosemary from the roast that was cooking in the oven. I could hear Mark in the other room, packing his bag for the week-long business trip that loomed ahead of him. I took a moment to savor the peace of the evening, the rhythmic sound of my knife hitting the cutting board, and the comforting hum of home. "Hey, Sarah, do you think I should take my blue tie or the gray one?" Mark called out, his voice breaking through my thoughts. "Definitely the blue one. It goes better with your suit," I replied, smiling to myself. I could already picture how handsome he would look in that outfit, ready to impress clients and colleagues. "Blue it is," he said, his footsteps echoing as he moved around the room. "I can't believe I'll be gone for an entire week. It feels like forever." "It'll go by fast," I reassured him, stirring the pot on the stove. "Just think about how nice it'll be when you're back. We can have a little date night." "Sounds perfect," he said, peeking into the kitchen. "What's for dinner?" "Your favorite, chicken with roasted vegetables," I said, trying to keep my voice light, even though a part of me felt a twinge of sadness at the thought of him leaving. Mark wrapped his arms around my waist, pulling me close. "You spoil me," he whispered, kissing the top of my head. I closed my eyes for a moment, letting the warmth of his affection wash over me. As I turned back to my cooking, I felt a buzz in my pocket. I glanced at my phone and saw a text from my Uncle David. He was in town and wanted to stop by. I quickly typed out a response, letting him know he was welcome to visit. I hadn't seen David in ages, and while he could be unpredictable, I was excited to catch up. "Guess what? Uncle David is coming over," I announced, trying to hide my mixed feelings about his visit. Mark raised an eyebrow. "David? The one who always has a wild story or two? This should be interesting." "Yeah, he's staying with us for a bit because his house is being renovated," I explained, stirring the pot again. "It's only for a few days." "Just be careful with him. You know how he can be," Mark warned, his tone light but serious. "You don't want him to stay longer than planned." "I'll keep an eye on him," I promised, chuckling. "I'm sure he just needs a place to crash." A while later, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden hue through the kitchen window, Mark finished packing. He kissed me one last time before grabbing his suitcase. "Take care of yourself, okay? I don't want you getting lonely." "I'll be fine, I promise," I said, feeling a mix of confidence and anxiety wash over me. I watched as he stepped out the door, waving goodbye with a smile that made my heart flutter. The moment he was gone, the house felt eerily quiet. The sound of the door clicking shut echoed through the empty rooms. I took a deep breath and forced myself to focus on the task at hand. I set the table, pouring a glass of wine for myself, trying to shake off the loneliness creeping in. Just as I was about to sit down to eat, there was a knock at the door. My heart raced with anticipation. I opened the door to find David standing there, a charming smile on his face. "Sarah, it's been too long," he exclaimed, pulling me into a warm embrace. "David, it's great to see you." I returned the hug, feeling the familiar comfort of his presence. He stepped inside, taking off his coat, and I noticed the way his eyes sparkled with mischief. "I hope you don't mind me dropping by like this. My place is a mess with the renovations," he explained, glancing around the cozy living room. "I could really use a place to crash for a bit." "Of course you're welcome here," I said, feeling a sense of obligation to help family. "You can stay in the guest room." "Actually," he said, leaning in a little closer, "would it be too much trouble if I slept in your room for one night? I just feel safer there, you know, like home." I hesitated, the request stirring something inside me. I suppose that's fine," I said slowly, my heart racing a bit faster than before. "Just for tonight, though." Thank you. I appreciate it, David said, his grin widening. I felt a strange mix of comfort and unease at his words, but I brushed it off. After all, family was family, and it was just one night. What could possibly go wrong? That night, I settled into my room, the soft glow of the bedside lamp casting gentle shadows against the walls. David sat across from me on the edge of the bed, his demeanor relaxed, a stark contrast to the whirlwind of emotions swirling within me. We started sharing stories, reminiscing about the past, and I couldn't help but feel a strange connection blooming between us. I remembered the summers spent at my grandparents' house, where David would entertain us with his exaggerated tales of adventure. "Do you remember that time I tried to teach you how to ride a bike?" he asked, a playful grin spreading across his face. I chuckled, the warmth of nostalgia washing over me. "You made me fall at least 10 times before I finally got it right. I think you were more interested in watching me crash than actually helping." David laughed, a rich sound that filled the room. "Hey, it builds character, right? Besides, you were a natural. I still remember how proud you looked when you finally rode all the way down the street without falling." I felt a flutter in my chest, a mix of affection and something else, something I quickly shoved aside. I glanced at the clock, the hands ticking away, reminding me that I needed to be careful. "It's getting late. I should probably head to bed." "Are you sure?" he asked, his tone softening. "I mean, I could use the company a little longer. It feels nice to talk to someone who knows me." I hesitated, caught off guard by his words. I had always seen David as family, but tonight felt different. "I guess a little longer wouldn't hurt," I said, trying to sound casual. As we continued to talk, the room felt charged, the air thick with an unspoken tension. David leaned in closer, and I could feel the heat radiating from him. My heart raced as I tried to focus on the stories we shared, but my thoughts kept wandering. This was my uncle, after all. I shouldn't be feeling this way. "Sarah, do you ever think about how life changes?" he asked suddenly, his gaze piercing into mine. "How we end up in places we never imagined?" I nodded slowly, feeling a weight settle in my chest. "All the time. It's strange, isn't it? Sometimes I feel like I'm living in a dream, and then I wake up and everything is different." "Sometimes I wish I could just escape," he said, his voice dropping to a whisper. "You have a good life, Sarah. Mark is a lucky guy." "Yeah, I guess," I replied, forcing a smile. "But it's not perfect. No one's life is." He leaned in closer, his breath warm against my skin. "You deserve to be happy, Sarah. Really happy. Sometimes I think people forget that." My pulse quickened as I looked into his eyes, a mixture of longing and confusion swirling within me. "David, But before I could finish my thought, he leaned in even closer, and I could feel the tension between us crackling. I pulled back slightly, my heart pounding in my chest. "This is wrong," I whispered, my voice trembling. "Is it?" he asked, his eyes searching mine. "Or is it just what we've been conditioned to believe?" I shook my head, trying to dismiss the fluttering sensation in my stomach. "You're my uncle. This isn't right." "Family doesn't always mean we have to deny what we feel," he replied, his voice low and enticing. The room felt smaller, the walls closing in around us. I could feel the pull between us, like gravity drawing me closer to him. I knew I should push him away, remind him of the boundaries we had set. But something deep inside me was fighting against that logic. Days passed, and David's presence in my life became increasingly comfortable. On one particular evening, we shared a drink, laughter flowing easily between us as we discussed everything from childhood memories to our dreams for the future. I felt a rush of excitement as he leaned in, closer than before, and I fought to suppress the thrill that shot through me. Sarah, he said softly, his voice low and inviting. You know there's something special between us, right? I opened my mouth to respond, but the words caught in my throat. The air was thick with tension, and all I could think about was the warmth of his body next to mine. David, please, I managed to say, my voice barely above a whisper. We can't. Why not? He pressed, his gaze intense. Why can't we just explore this? Just for a moment? I felt my heart racing, the conflict within me growing stronger. I had always been loyal to Mark, but in this moment, the idea of giving in to temptation felt intoxicating. I ached to reach out, to close the distance between us, but I knew I had to resist. Because it's not just about us, I said, my voice trembling. There's so much at stake, David. He sighed, leaning back as if my words had physically pushed him away. I get it, but I can't ignore how I feel. And I think you feel it too. I'm married, I said firmly, though my heart didn't fully agree. Marriage doesn't keep us from feeling, Sarah. It doesn't erase the connection we have. I looked away, fighting against the storm of emotions raging inside me. I had to remind myself of my commitment to Mark, the love we built together. But as I glanced back at David, the boundaries between family and something more began to blur, and I felt myself teetering on the edge of a precipice I was terrified to plunge into. I leaned against the doorframe of my bedroom, the weight of David's last kiss still fresh on my lips. My heart raced, a tumult of emotions swirling within me. How could I let it get this far? I had pushed him away that night, insisting that we couldn't cross that line. Yet here I was, torn between the comfort of my marriage and the thrilling connection I felt with my uncle. Sarah. David's voice broke through my thoughts, soft yet insistent. He stood a few steps away, his eyes searching mine. We can't keep pretending this doesn't exist. The chemistry between us is undeniable. I shook my head, my pulse quickening. David, please, we can't do this. You're my uncle, and I'm married to Mark. The words felt heavy on my tongue, each syllable a reminder of my vows, yet the way he looked at me made my resolve waver. That doesn't change how I feel, he replied, stepping closer, his voice low and steady. I know we're family, but you can't deny there's something real here, something worth exploring. I felt a blush creeping up my cheeks. Exploring? David, this is wrong on so many levels. Mark trusts me. I can't betray him like this. The guilt I felt gnawed at me, biting deeper with each passing moment. Is it betrayal if it's mutual? He challenged, his brow furrowed with concern. I don't want to hurt you, but we can't ignore the connection we have. It's more than just familial affection, it's passion. My heart skipped a beat at his words. Passion. The very idea sent shivers down my spine, igniting a fire I desperately wanted to extinguish. What about Mark? I insisted, my voice trembling now. He's away, trusting me to be faithful. I can't do this to him. David stepped back, running a hand through his dark hair, visibly frustrated. I'm not trying to put you in a difficult position, Sarah, but you have to admit, there's a spark between us. It's electric. He paused, his eyes locking onto mine with a fierce intensity. Do you really want to deny that? I bit my lip, feeling the conflict within me deepen. I don't know, I whispered. I feel guilty even thinking about it. I glanced down, unable to meet his gaze. I should be focusing on Mark, on our marriage. Mark isn't here, David said, his voice softening. And you're alone with me. You deserve to feel alive, to experience something more than just routine. He stepped closer again, the space between us narrowing. What if this is your chance? I swallowed hard, the air thick with tension. This isn't a chance, David. It's a mistake waiting to happen. But even as I said it, I felt my resolve crumbling. The thrill of the forbidden was intoxicating, and I couldn't deny the fluttering in my stomach whenever he was near. Then let's not think about what's right or wrong for a moment, he urged, his voice a seductive whisper. Let's just feel. Just this once. The words hung heavily in the air, and I could hear my heart pounding in response. I wanted to push him away, to retreat back into the safety of my life with Mark, but the pull toward David was magnetic. I felt like I was standing on the edge of a precipice, teetering between the known and the exhilarating unknown. David, I began, but my voice faltered as he took another step forward, closing the distance between us. I could feel the heat radiating off him, the intensity of his gaze making it difficult to breathe. Just one moment, Sarah, he implored, his eyes pleading. Let's not ruin this with fear. Just let it happen. I closed my eyes, my heart battling my mind as I fought against the tide of desire threatening to sweep me away. Was this truly a moment I wanted to savor, or was it a decision I would regret for the rest of my life? The lines of loyalty and infidelity blurred and twisted around me, leaving me breathless. And just like that, I was lost in the moment, caught between the past and a future I never thought I would consider. I lay in bed, the sheets tangled around me like the chaos in my mind. The light of dawn seeped through the curtains, casting a golden glow across the room, but it did little to warm the chill of dread that settled in my stomach. I had given in to temptation last night, and the memory of David's touch ignited both thrill and fear within me. Sarah, I whispered to myself, my voice barely above a breath. What had I done? The weight of betrayal felt heavy on my chest, suffocating. I closed my eyes, trying to block out the morning light and the reality of my actions. Mark was supposed to be my everything, my partner, my safe haven. Instead, I had invited chaos into our lives. Just then, I heard the sound of keys jangling at the front door. My heart raced. No, I muttered, sitting up abruptly. Mark had mentioned he might return early, but I hadn't taken him seriously. I scrambled to tidy up the room, throwing the covers into disarray, as if that would somehow erase the events of the night before. Sarah, Mark called out, his voice echoing through the house. Panic surged through me. I raced to the bathroom, splashing water on my face, hoping it would wash away the remnants of guilt. I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror, my hair tousled, my eyes wide with fear. I looked like a stranger. Are you home? Mark's voice was closer now, and I could hear the sound of his footsteps. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. Just a second, I called out, my voice shaky despite my best efforts. I stepped out of the bathroom, forcing a smile as I met Mark in the hallway. He looked tired but happy, his briefcase in one hand and a small bouquet of flowers in the other. Surprise, he grinned, holding the flowers out to me. I thought I'd bring you something to brighten your day. I took the flowers, my heart sinking further. They're beautiful, Mark. Thank you, I managed to say. But my voice felt hollow. I could see a flicker of concern in his eyes as he studied my face, but I quickly diverted the conversation. How was your trip? It was good, but I missed you, he said, stepping closer. Why don't we celebrate your patience with a nice dinner tonight? My heart raced at his words, a mix of guilt and affection flooding me. That sounds lovely, I replied, forcing a smile again. I'd love to. Great, I'll take care of everything, he said, and I felt a wave of relief wash over me. Mark always knew how to make me feel cherished, but the thought of our dinner filled me with dread. How could I keep this secret? As we chatted over coffee, I realized Mark's gaze lingered longer than usual, as if he were searching for something behind my eyes. Are you okay? He asked suddenly, his brow furrowing. "You seem a bit off." "I'm fine," I lied, my heart thudding in my chest. "Just a little tired, I guess." I felt a bead of sweat trickle down my back. I needed to keep it together. He nodded slowly, but I could tell he wasn't convinced. "If there's anything bothering you, you can tell me," he said softly, placing his hand over mine. His warmth contrasted sharply with the cold guilt gnawing at me. "Really, I'm okay," I insisted, pulling my hand away slightly. I couldn't bear to see the disappointment in his eyes if I confessed. "All right," he said, albeit reluctantly. "Just remember, I'm here for you. Always." As he turned back to his coffee, I felt a pang of guilt stab at me. I should have been grateful for his unwavering support, but all I could think about was David, his laughter, the way he made me feel alive, and the passion we had shared. The tension in the air was palpable, and I could feel my stomach knotting as the clock ticked away the minutes. I needed to keep my composure until I could figure out what to do about David. I couldn't let Mark's love be tainted by my mistakes. "Let's take a walk later," Mark suggested suddenly, breaking the silence. "It's a beautiful day, and I want to enjoy it with you." "Sure, that sounds nice," I said, my heart racing at the thought of being outside, away from the confines of our home where my secret lay hidden, waiting to unravel. As we sipped our coffee, I felt the weight of the world pressing down on my shoulders. I was living a lie, and with every passing moment, the truth loomed closer, threatening to implode our lives. I just hoped I could keep it together long enough to figure out a way out of this mess. The days that followed our night of passion felt like a heavy fog hanging over my head. Guilt gnawed at my insides, a constant reminder of my betrayal. I avoided David as if he were a wildfire waiting to consume me, but the memory of his touch lingered like an intoxicating fragrance I couldn't shake off. Each time I caught a glimpse of him around the house, my heart would race, a mix of longing and fear twisting in my chest. Mark was becoming increasingly suspicious. I could see it in his eyes, the way they searched mine for answers I wasn't ready to give. He would ask me about my day, and I would respond with vague details, hoping to deflect the growing tension between us. "You seem a bit distant lately," he said one evening, his voice tinged with concern. "Is everything all right?" "Of course, everything's fine," I replied, forcing a smile that felt more like a grimace. "Just a lot on my mind." "Just work stress?" he probed, his brow furrowing. "Yeah, you know how it is." It was a lie, but it was all I had, and I clung to it like a lifeline. Then one evening, Mark surprised me with a romantic dinner. The table was set with our best china, candles flickering softly, casting a warm glow around the room. He had even cooked, his attempt to rekindle the spark we once had. I watched him from across the table, my heart heavy with the weight of the secret I was keeping. "Do you remember the first dinner we had here?" he asked, a smile playing on his lips as he poured wine into our glasses. "You wore that red dress, and I couldn't take my eyes off you." "Yeah, I remember," I said, forcing a laugh, but it felt hollow. I couldn't help but think about how different things were now. Mark reached across the table, taking my hand in his. "I've been feeling a bit disconnected lately. Maybe we can plan a weekend getaway? Just the two of us?" My heart raced at the thought. "A getaway sounds nice," I replied, but inside, I was screaming. How could we go away together when my heart was so entangled with another man? As we ate, Mark continued to share stories, trying to draw me in. I smiled and nodded, but my mind was elsewhere, haunted by David's kiss, the way his lips had felt against mine, the heat that had surged through me. It was exhilarating and terrifying all at once. "Sarah," Mark said, his tone shifting, "I need to be honest with you. I've noticed you've been a bit off lately. I can't shake the feeling that something's bothering you. Is there something you want to talk about?" My heart pounded in my chest. This was the moment I had dreaded, confessing everything or continuing the charade. "I'm just tired, Mark. Really," I said, my voice shaking slightly. "It's nothing to worry about." He studied me for a moment, looking for cracks in my facade, and I felt naked under his gaze. "I just want to make sure you're okay. You mean everything to me. You know that?" "I know," I murmured, trying to sound reassuring. "I'm okay. I promise." But deep down, I felt like a fraud. I was anything but okay. I was tangled in a web of lies, and the person I was betraying the most was myself. As we finished dinner, the weight of my secret hung between us, thick and suffocating. After clearing the table, we settled onto the couch, and I leaned against him, grateful for the warmth of his body, yet painfully aware of the chasm that had formed between us. I wanted to bridge that gap, to feel connected again, but my mind kept drifting back to David, and I could feel the walls closing in around me. "Sarah," Mark said softly, breaking the silence. "I love you. I just want us to be happy." "I love you too," I replied, but the words tasted bitter on my tongue. How could I love him when my heart was divided? The evening dragged on, filled with small talk and laughter that felt forced. As Mark held me close, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was living a double life, and the truth was lurking just beneath the surface, waiting for the right moment to explode. I drove to David's apartment, my heart pounding in my chest. I had to end things. I knew it, deep down. I had to confront him, to clear the air, and put an end to the chaos that had invaded my life. But as I stepped into the hallway, a chill ran down my spine. The door to his apartment was ajar, swinging slightly in the breeze, and the dim light inside flickered ominously. "David?" I called out, my voice trembling. Silence greeted me, thick and suffocating. I pushed the door open wider, and my stomach twisted as I took in the scene before me. The furniture was overturned, cushions strewn across the floor, and a lamp lay shattered in the corner. It looked like a hurricane had swept through, and panic surged through me. "David!" I yelled, my voice echoing in the empty space. I stepped inside, my heart racing. I could feel the weight of dread pressing down on me. Where was he? I glanced around, looking for any sign of him, and then I heard it. A low groan from the bedroom. I rushed towards the sound, my pulse pounding in my ears. As I entered the bedroom, I found him sitting on the floor, his back against the bed. His shirt was torn, and there were scratches on his arms. He looked up at me, eyes wide and filled with fear. "Sarah," he breathed, and the sight of him so vulnerable sent a wave of relief mixed with terror through me. "I didn't think you'd come. What happened?" I knelt beside him, my hands trembling as I reached out to touch his shoulder. "Are you okay?" "No, I'm not." He swallowed hard, his voice shaking. "I've been threatened by someone from my past, someone I thought I had left behind. They're looking for me, and they won't stop until they find me." I felt a rush of emotions: fear, anger, confusion. "What do you mean? Why didn't you tell me? This is serious, David." "I didn't want to drag you into this," he said, running a hand through his hair, a gesture I found so familiar yet so out of place in this moment. "But they broke in here looking for me. I barely got away." I took a deep breath, trying to process everything he was saying. Just as I was about to respond, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out, and my heart dropped as I saw Mark's name flash across the screen. "Sarah, you need to get out of here," David urged, his voice rising in urgency. "If they're looking for me, they might come after you too." I didn't have time to think. I opened the message, and my blood ran cold. "I know everything. I've been investigating. I'm on my way. We need to talk." "What does it say?" David asked, his eyes darting from me to the door. Mark knows, I whispered, my voice barely above a breath. He knows about us. He's coming here. David's face paled. What? No, this can't be happening. We need to go. Before he could finish, I heard the sound of footsteps in the hallway. Panic surged through me. What do we do? I'll hide, he said quickly, scrambling to his feet. You need to act normal. Just play it cool. David, you can't just hide. This is my husband, I shot back, desperation creeping into my voice. I can't lie to him, not about this. Sarah, please, he pleaded, his eyes frantic. If he finds me here, it won't just be bad for me. It'll be bad for you too. Just trust me. I'll figure it out. I felt trapped, torn between the man I had married and the man who had awakened something inside me. I nodded, heart racing, as David ducked behind the bed. I took a deep breath and composed myself, trying to ignore the turmoil swirling within me. Just as I straightened up, the door swung open, and Mark stepped inside, his expression unreadable. My heart sank as I found myself standing in the middle of a storm, caught between two worlds, two men, and the choices that would define me.